we go.
I number 3.
Almost no point in writing it down since it's backwards, but here we are for dramatic effect. Intensify.
Can't even read it.
Whatever.
So this is kind of how we run the community side of things. So once you already have the invitation, you got the sales page, you're doing this cool thing. They recognize themselves, they want to be a part of it. Cool, now they signed up. Now you got your indoctrination. You're like, cool, this is the identity. This is what we do. This is who we are. This is how we behave. You start moving them through the product and the experience. Then it's like, okay, that's, I think, how most people kind of run their products, or they'll throw a community on and just hope they talk to each other. But for us, community is very much about, well, how do we intensify this group identity, right? How do we take more of their day-to-day and tie it towards this identity so that they can just completely embody it, and they wear it, they share it, they tell their friends, and they're like fully a part of this thing.
If you look at cults, then they want more and more buy-in into the cult, and basically the more that they could strip away who you were and become more of who the tribe or the cult is all about, then that's a recipe for retention. Because then you've just alienated every part of who you were and who you belong to, all your friends and family. And now this is what we're all about. That's why they got people to shave their heads or wear certain things. You look at religion, there's like a lot of rules, because that just helps people identify, this is who I am, this is what I belong to. And therefore, I am like this and not like everybody else. So social identity theory talks about how people have an increase in pride and self-esteem by belonging to these in-groups, and the more weird stuff you can do to increase group appearance, slang, verbiage, what you do, what you don't do, all of these rules, it sounds controlling, but people actually feel an increased sense of pride and self-esteem by having rules to express, because the subconscious wants to know how to behave and how to belong, and these help them do that.
And that's what we were just talking about before we went live on this call, is when we joined the Fanshawe cross country team, it was the first cult that we'd ever been a part of. And there's still so much of what happened there that we take into this methodology and bring into these tribes and memberships. And even just talking about, he's like, we weren't allowed to be in a hot tub the day before race day. You know, that was a rule of a Falcon, specifically a rule of a Falcon cross country member, right? And so there's these certain rules which become these certain rituals that make up the identity, that make up the behavior of what we do in our days, what we are allowed to do, what we aren't allowed to do. And the fact that we all do these things together, right? It just kept intensifying this identity to the point where still, even if I don't have a race, like if I have a run the next day, like maybe I'll second guess, because that's still in my head. It's like, am I allowed to be in hot water? You know, because of like how relaxed it makes your legs, and that's not good for a race. And so there's these rules in place, which become these rituals, which become this behavior that makes up and intensifies the group identity.
So sports is just a good example of intensifying group behavior, because you see like everyone has the same jersey, the same color, a certain symbol that makes up, represents who we are. There's rules that you do in practice, on game day, in between, how you socialize, locker room behavior. Sports is just a really good framework for showing how to intensify group behavior.
Yeah, I feel like it was the University of Texas that we looked at when we were doing the video course in terms of how they got theirs, because they even have their own unique hand signal. Obviously, they are all wearing orange. They're all Longhorns, right? And so, yeah, if you ever want to look at great examples, then check out sports teams. Specifically, like college sports teams or NFL, they do a banging job. And multi-million-dollar brands.
Essentially, this is just a quick overview of what tribe building is and how it's different than communities, because most communities, they build product first, and then they just throw all customers into this community, hope they like each other, hope they feel enough value from this community to keep paying, because the products itself aren't enough, right? So we look at it as, if you start here at the identity level, then no matter what you want to sell, it becomes an extension of themselves, which we were saying last time in Building Hope. So there's even a quote Mike found on Liquid Death. Basically, they create like a country club membership by selling their souls. So the more you lean into your brand archetype, the more you understand what you can get away with and what you shouldn't. But Liquid Death is very much edgy. You can tell just by the name itself. They don't want to be another water. They want to murder your thirst. And so you can sell your soul to enter this membership. And from there, then they're so bought in that it doesn't matter what they're trying to sell. Which is why Supreme, which they cater to skaters and that underground artsy kind of like an FU to society. And they can sell a red brick for $30 that resells for $1,000 on eBay because it's an extension of themselves. So the more you can intensify group behavior, the more you can sell because everything becomes an extension of that group identity.
I also like what the founder of Liquid Death said. He's like, Liquid Death has a country club membership. And that's why it's like, well, how do we articulate what a tribe brand is? And it very much is. It's like, well, is it membership? It's like, well, you just want that membership kind of mentality, right? You want them to get bought in and you want them to keep buying in. That's the point, right? And that's where merch does such a good job. So they said that they have 200,000 people that have handed over their souls and their email addresses to be a part of this country club. And they did $3 million last year just in merch because people want to represent, they want to be a part of it. And I like how he said that once you've gotten big enough and you have a real brand, you can sell whatever you want. And so that's where we talk about the other revenue streams of tribe brands, because it all starts with one product experience, right? Like you have some hero journey, you then bring that back to people like yourself who have this problem and they want, you handhold them through to the finish line, you get them to pay for the experience and hopefully keep paying for that experience. But then it's like, well, how do we intensify that? Then, they want to buy the merch. They, there's the events, there's the hierarchy into the different levels of what that is. And the more clear you are, like Rick was saying, on your archetype and what your lane is, then there's the more partnerships and more, ways that you can start to monetize with this group that just keeps getting bigger and better. And you're just leading these people. Much fun.
And then by understanding these things before you build your course or your membership content, the more you can add the custom slang, the verbiage, the hand signs into those videos itself, because as they're going through the experience, every piece of that experience becomes a possibility and an opportunity to indoctrinate them back into that group identity. So the more you show up and act as if this identity, the more they will mirror it back to you because they want to behave and belong according to that identity. That's what gives them pride and self-esteem.
And that's why we've spent so much time on building the messaging before we do any of this, right? So we look at all of this, but it really comes down into our tribe branding methodology of like, all right, well, how do we get the 30,000 vote view? How do we get all of the pieces in place before we ever write any words, before we ever build a product? Because then, like when we built the Kettlebell Warrior Academy, then we already had all those things in place. So we could just tell him, finish every video the same way, put the fist up and tell them to keep fighting. Right? So we have our signature sign off and we have our signature gang sign. And then all of a sudden we have a way for people to, give us that user generated content because they already know how and what to do. Right? And then all it takes is having the motivation to do so. Right? And so once you keep doing that, you'll start to see mirroring kick in and other people in the group start keep fighting, right?
Which just intensifies similarity. This whole thing comes down to similarity. Get them in with the current identity that you share with your customers, indoctrinate them into a new collective identity, and then intensify it so everybody understands how to behave and belong. And I don't understand how you can build a successful course membership online experience without the foundation of the brand, which is why we always start with the tribe brand identity. Because if the tribe brand identity overlaps with the customer identity, then it doesn't matter what you sell because all the products become an extension of who we are. So essentially, that's what we're building in the back end is our process on how to create the tribe brand identity, because it goes from how you create the brand, how you create the product, and then how you create that community. So it's all cohesive and everything just comes back to intensifying similarity, as opposed to how most people have it, where it's disjointed products that they try to get people in. It's like, oh, if I build this, I can get more customers into my community. If I build this, I can get more customers in my community. And then you just have a bunch of different products, a bunch of different community members with different goals on different timelines. And then you put them all into a community. And of course, there's no engagement because people don't understand really who we are and what we're talking about. But when it's all very similar and very clear, then the transformation journey just becomes, I guess all the products inside that transformation journey becomes tools and weapons for that collective mission. So that's what we're building, how to build your tribe brand identity. And from there, then you have the guardrails for every brand decision that you ever make so that it's all cohesive around that collective identity. And so if you are interested in seeing what that's all about, then leave a comment below with what you're building. And it's still going to be at least a month away before we're ready to launch that. But we don't know how to build any online experience until the tribe brand identity is solid, because every piece of the brand needs to reference each other, because it's very cyclical. If it's not, then it doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, people don't buy. The confused mind doesn't buy. But as long as it's a part of their identity, then they're gonna, as long as the products are part of their identity, then it's an extension of themselves. You get it. You get it. I just came off a long flight. I still got jet lag. The words aren't wording. But essentially, to recap, find an identity that you hold, that you actually want to. Like your tribe becomes a reflection of who you bring in the first place. So that's essentially the most important piece of it, is that current identity. Who do you want to hang out with? And then from there, give them a new identity, because we need to basically influence their behavior in order to get them out of their own way, because people are naturally in their own way. Again, the words aren't wording. Change is the enemy of comfort, and the human brain is designed for comfort. And so we need to get them out of their own way, out of their current identity. And the best way to do that is with a new identity.
Because then we can control the behavior of what that identity does.
And then from there, this is just the fun stuff of how we operate, how we act, how we belong.
It's your kingdom, right? That's why we look a lot at one of the guys we're working on onboarding for our creative agency side is a Dungeons and Dragons master, because it's already how they think, right? The whole thing is world building. So it's like, what is the kingdom that you're building, and what are the citizens, basically, what is the identity? And even just thinking about where you live, it has a country name, it has city names, it has citizen names, like we're Canadian, that's an identity that we hold. And from there, there's rules, and there's laws, and there's roles within it, and there's things we say, the dialect, the accent of every different part, even like the weird words that you'll hear in New York that that'll be completely different than LA. And so everywhere you look, you can see how all of these kind of play together, and then where you can intensify. And so it really is taking the time to think about the whole thing before you ever get into the weeds of it. And so I see a lot of the comments and they're like, well, what about pricing? And it's like, can't even think about pricing, which pricing is also still just a test. But you can't even think about that until you have all of the pieces in place. So get out of the weeds, get to the 30,000 foot view. Yeah, like Ricky in the clouds yesterday coming home from Ireland. Big picture stuff. That's where we want to start. That's what we're looking for here. So this is our 3-step process to tribe building. And if you can start there, then you can build something that is legacy-based, it has longevity, and then you can just start putting products inside of this as opposed to just trying to make up whatever you feel like selling to attract more customers. Get them in, and you can sell them anything. So that's how you build your tribe. All right. Well, leave a comment below if you're interested in how we do the tribe brand identity. And we'll see you in the community. So let's go build your tribe. Let's keep building. All right. Cheers.